After 7 years in office, the term lame duck can now begin to be applied to Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari as he faces down his final year in office. The reference to lame duck often infects the fears of outgoing presidents as they and their supporters wonder whether they can overcome political stalemate and defy increasingly long odds to make good on their yet-to-be-fulfilled campaign promises and successfully preserve another sliver of their legacy. Thus far, the jury of public perception seems to be out on what kind of mark President Buhari will make in his final year and whether history will reward or condemn him. Well, one man who's already begun assessing President Buhari's finish line is the lawyer and public affairs analyst Daniel Bwala, a barrister of Lincoln's Inn and a member of the ruling APC party. He's written an opinion piece about it in Nigeria's top news and current affairs publication, This Day newspaper, and he joins me now in the studio. Daniel, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me and Happy New Year.
Same to you. So is his record in office good, bad or mixed?
Well, I think it's good, but there is a little bit of mix there in the sense that we know that there are quite a number of projects that were commenced 2 years ago, some in fact last year and some at the beginning of the first term, that we're looking to have them launched this year. So you cannot definitively or conclusively say it is fantastic because you have to wait to see the actualization of that. But within this the period of 6-7 years of power, a fair-minded person, and I say that with every sense of responsibility, when you look at what the president has tried to achieve and some of the items that he has already achieved, you will but doff your cap for him. And if time permits, we would have a look at infrastructural projects that were commenced by this government. And you know, like I've always said, politicians usually, when they come into government, try to avoid embarking on a project that is in the long term because they are not sellable items. They are not the talking point when election cycle comes. So oftentimes you see politicians when they come, they look at the short-term program, a program of 6-7 months, and a program when it is on the eve of election, they will try to make it happen within the period of 8 months because they know when you go into campaigning, you have to be able to point at A, B, and C, 1, 2, and 3 to say these are the things we have done. So it takes a courageous person to look at the country, look at the fundamentals that are lacking in the country.
And you think he's done that?
I think he has because...
Right. Okay, well, let's break it down to the bits and pieces, as they say. Insecurity, Nigeria still grappling with that. Does it look like he'll record significant improvements by the time he leaves office a year or so from now?
I think he will. And I also think that we have recorded a marked success. The only problem we have in the country is that anytime you deal with insecurity in point A, they metamorphose in point B. So it gives the people the impression as if nothing is being done. If you look at the Northeast, because that was where we have the biggest challenge at the time the president came on board. If you go to the Northeast now, the Boko Haram are reduced to a minimal. In fact, their operations are in pocket places, soft targets. But when he came into power, they were controlling substantial parts of the local government in Borno State. And I hail from Borno State. There are people who will try to make you believe, or they try to make the argument, there are quite a number of local government in Borno State that have not been taken over by the government. But I can tell you that is false because most of this local government, although the federal government forces have taken over the places, but because of the uncertainty of governance in those areas, individuals that have migrated from that to IDPs in Borno or Maiduguri are reluctant to go back. So because there is an empty space there, ungoverned spaces, once in a while you find the operations of this Boko Haram, which is why the governor of Borno insisted that by this December that just passed, they were going to move the people. So we have success in the Northeast, but it was not conceived that they were going to move to Northwest and we're going to have a different animal altogether. Because now we have a problem of not just Boko Haram that you can isolate and attack, but we have the problem of banditry, we have the problem of kidnapping. And there are economic aspects to it. If you raise that as a talking point in Nigeria. People will look at it purely from the security point of view. But when you go to places like the United States Institute of Peace, they look at dynamics. For example, the economic aspect of the problem in the Northwest stem from the discovery of, is it gold or so, that you find activities of foreigners coming in and dislodging people. Now it has created a crisis economy. A crisis economy is a situation where insecurity is so strong that people buy into it for economic purposes.
But the whole point of having a government is to look at these things. I mean, you assess, you have security reports, you have security assessments, and you try and nip it in the bud, not sit back and do nothing until it takes hold. Let's move away from that and talk about the other issues that have blighted every administration in this country that you also raised in your very good article there. Corruption, one of them, poverty, the other. How does your article assess him on those?
So, in the area of corruption, we need a conversation, because the change, that is my opinion. People can have a different opinion on that. When we moved away from Magu-led EFCC to Bwala-led EFCC, although it's too early to judge Bwala, right? But we know for the fact that during Magu's administration, you can accuse him of being brutal on certain politicians, but you cannot accuse him of not being detailed in those prosecution cases. Now, Bwala has come, who is doing his very best and is a smart anti-corruption czar. But we are now coming into the election year. So that's why I talked about navigating around the politics of economy and the economy of the politics, because when you come close to election, you'll find politicians occupying key positions in government wanting to use their influence on agencies of government to try to, one, wield them to their own advantage or wield them to the disadvantage of their actual or perceived opponent. So, and once you get to that zone, then the assessment of success now becomes careful, and you have to be meticulous. In some cases, if you are not careful, it becomes then difficult for you to be able to say that is a success in that line. Now, we have seen recoveries. We have seen the cases of these 419 people, advanced fee fraud, success. But when it comes to dealing with politicians who are the major predators of the economy, we haven't seen success.
Right. So he's failed in that direction.
No, not failed. We have.
Well, if he hasn't succeeded, he's failed, hasn't he?
The reason is because that fight, valid point you raise, but this is the defense. That part cannot be determined by one branch of government. So the executive can do investigation and even arrest an individual.
But you're not impressed with what has happened?
Yes, I am not.
Okay. Let's move on to talk about ethnic divisions in Nigeria. Many people feel that this country has never been more divided. What's your opinion, piece, advice? What's the advice that your opinion piece is giving him? What is it asking him to do in this last year in office about that?
Constructive engagement. So the president has to be conscious. He has to be actively involved in engaging with different parts of the country. Unfortunately for him, and this is my observation, unfortunately for him, because he has not supervised in the real sense of the word, and because it is in his characteristic, he gives you responsibility, he relies on your judgment.
Right.
And oftentimes he hardly comes back to say, are you doing it right or wrong? And that's why we haven't seen ministers change. So that weakness has now given rise to individuals in this country from certain parts of the country that could have used their position to not only convey the goodwill of the government, but in fact, emphasize the wishes. So I'll give you an example. We have
briefly
the foreign affairs minister.
Right.
Is a super minister. In America, that is the third person after the vice president. That ministry is massive. But if you go to Enugu, where he comes from, the Enugu people will tell you they have not felt and they are not feeling the impact of this government. So you blame the president, but you would have thought that somebody occupying this position could have used that to benefit his people, thereby conveying the message that the president is an all-inclusive person.
Right. Okay. Well, bearing in mind that to a lesser or greater extent, you are probably biased as a member of Mr. Buhari's party. What do you think his legacy will be?
There are quite a number. So legacy in the area of infrastructure is one, and we have the railroad, the seaport, we have the power sector, we have the powering of institutions of government, we have powering of the marketplaces. This is providing a platform for which economic activities will thrive. That is a legacy, and the reason I say that is because the millennials that you see on social media criticizing the government, they were not born when we last had the rail system working. So it will take a long time for them to agree that this is in fact what we need for a country like Nigeria, where people are hardworking to just thrive. That is a legacy. The other part is the legacy of the rule of law. And I know it's paradoxical, but if you have looked at Nigeria in the past 20-something years, he is one president who never interferes in election processes in determining what is the outcome. As a matter of fact, the minute someone is declared as a winner, even if the person emerged from another political party, he will be the first person to congratulate, thereby avoiding the tendency for us to go into court. I remember not long ago, Governor Wike of PDP had to congratulate him for releasing to Rivers what was theirs. But you know, in the past, Lagos suffered tremendously when presidents used political reason to keep them. So this, again, I see as legacy, because you are trying to say, I'm leaving behind a legacy where the rule of law should prevail.
Right. Okay. Beyond, we've got about a minute to end this chat. Very interesting, by the way.
Right.
Beyond you yourself, how would you rate his popularity in Nigeria currently as he enters his final year in office? And we've got less than a minute.
That's difficult to assess, because if you listen to people out there, a lot of people think he hasn't done enough, and that's because the media mechanism of the government have not done enough in conveying what the president has done. So the perception is that he's not popular, but the reality is that he has done more than previous presidents.
Okay, Daniel Bwala, always an enormous pleasure talking with you. Daniel, of course, a barrister at Lincoln's Inn, a member of the ruling APC party, as well as a public affairs analyst. He's written this lovely opinion piece. I would advise you to read it. It's published in This Day newspaper. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.